have a drink afterwards,
okay? Good afternoon. Welcome to Club 57 2017. 18, right. Sophie and I wanted to come up together tonight because our co-organizer of the exhibition, Ann Magnuson, has come back. And this may be the last time she gets a chance to see the show, kind of. Here she is. Just to welcome you all and thank you. On Monday, we have Whitman and Shaman doing a live performance upstairs with Michael Musto. And on Wednesday, we have Drew Straub.
Thursday.
Who's here someplace.
Thursday.
Same
time, same place. Next week for Drew.
Yeah, you can see why I work with Sophie, because she remembers everything and I don't.
And just to say that this type of event, and actually specifically Peter's reading, is exactly the type of thing we had in mind when designing the space and wanting to keep the space really active and dynamic, and mostly with all of you here and you all coming back, have the public and the artists community. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
And give it up for...
Thank you all for coming today. It's a nice turnout. I live nowhere. The landlords took away my apartment in the East Village. The rich think they own the city, but back in 1978, this city was ours, not theirs, and it will be ours again. Burn, baby, burn. The End of Maybe, Chapter 1. The November sun flashed off a West Village window. The wavering reflection stalked the Christopher Street Pier to a lone youth in leather tuning a battered guitar. The 20-year-old blonde broke into a sly smile as the sapphire shimmer transformed him into a fallen angel regaining his halo. However, this heavenly image disappeared with a slash of his fingers against the Les Paul guitar, and Johnny Darling shut his eyes to envision CBGB's stage. Stark lighting enveloped a drummer, bassist, and an organist, fronted by a teenage Lolita, rasping words of love and no tomorrows. The imagined feedback of the Marshall amps buzzed in his ears, and a faceless audience materialized within his eyelids until a young boy's voice shattered the trance. Hey, man. This time of night, only gay sex seekers prowl the derelict docks. But the intruder was a friend, and Johnny released his guitar to face Frankie. Thanks for letting me finish. That a new song? The chill gust blew a shank of hair across Frankie Domingo's face. Times Square Johns found the Puerto Rican pretty, despite the scars crisscrossing his 17-year-old body. Just 3 chords strung together. Johnny thumbed his callous fingertips. Doesn't get more basic than that. The teenage rattled off a drum roll with frayed sticks. I snagged these from Jerry Nolan at Max's last night. How are the Heartbreakers? Johnny had skipped the show to entertain a customer. The crowd loved him. The teenage hunched his shoulders with a shiver. Johnny, you have $10? I gave the pawn shop my last $50 to get this guitar. Damn, I wish we could get out of here. Frankie moaned like a runaway in need of a dime to call home. And go where? What about Florida? Frankie glanced south as if the Sunshine State lay beyond the New Jersey docks. If you called your parents, they might wire you the money to come home. Yes, and tomorrow night, we'll be eating my mom's apple pie for Thanksgiving. I love apple pie. Frankie licked his lips. Only one problem. Johnny gestured towards Manhattan. I'm not leaving this behind. Fuck this city. Frankie chucked the battered drumsticks into the river. I hate the hustles, the smell of old men's hands on my skin, and you don't have it much better. Johnny walked away from the river. I left Florida for the same reasons you want to get out of New York. Johnny stopped on the curb. But you and me, we're going to make it as rock stars soon. Yeah, but not tonight. Frankie kicked an empty beer can into the gutter. No, tonight, we go to work. The traffic lights on West Street changed to green, and the cars accelerated to catch up to the synchronized signals. 53rd and 3rd? Frankie liked the sissies at those bars. They were never dangerous. No, tonight we're competing with the Midnight Cowboys. Times Square? Frankie sighed with resignation. The Strip pays more. How I look? Johnny pulled up his leather jacket's frayed collar. Like a prince. Frankie blew on his numb hands. Where'd anybody from Jerome Ave meet a prince? My grandmother read me fairy tales. They really have princes and princesses? Yes, as real as you and me. The chill air scraped over Johnny's right lung like a boat striking a reef. And when we meet one, what do? We take him for everything. Frankie snapped his fingers and leave him begging for more. The ache faded from Johnny's chest, and he draped his arm over the younger boy. Just one more thing. I know what you're going to say. Look out for number 1. Times Square will kill anyone breaking that road. I know. Frankie's childhood had revealed the worst of what New York had to offer the young. Then let's go uptown. Johnny dashed onto West Street. Watch out! 2 taxis avoided the guitarist. For what? I'll live forever. Johnny shouted from the other side of the street, because to not believe in his immortality was a sacrilege, at least until he reached 21, and that birthday was more than a year away, and a year was an eternity when you were only 20. Next, from my journal of 1978. The first time I came to the East Village was in 1970 with Wayne Shepherd. His sister lived on St. Mark's. The ex-Marine nurse had been dishonorably discharged for being a lesbian. Hannah wished she was back in the Corps, but she sold reefer to make ends meet. It was a good weed. 4 a.m. in the East Village, and the streets resemble Calcutta. Scores of bums sleep on the sidewalk. Eric Mitchell and I step over them, and one mumbles from a flaky mouth, "You have any change?" I gave him a quarter. "That's all you got, asshole?" "That's all I got, loser." Eric laughed and said, "The bums are colorful." Yeah, really colorful. I'd like to bring up Larry Fleischman. He's going to read Bad Poetry 1 from my poetry, his reading.
Bad Poetry, Part 1. Red Tate. Red Tate lies flat on his back, drunk on the Bowery. If his mother saw him, tears would flow from her eyes, and not for the first time. Red Tate drinks Ripple. Red Tate drinks Thunderbird. Red Tate drinks Gallo. Red Tate loves wine. It soothes his nerves, his shakes, his DTs. Red Tate, a bum, a drunk, a derelict, his mother's second son. Gorilla. In Central Park, a gorilla sits in his cage, a prisoner, trapped by man, his cousin. Edgar Rice Burroughs never went to Africa. Apes existed in his dreams, but not the same as the ape in the Central Park Zoo. He sits, motionless, mocked. His eyes meet mine. gentleness, savage gentleness, so much unlike us, his captors.
Journal 1978, August 2nd. Yesterday, Ann and I moved into 256 East 10th Street. White punks recolonizing a burnt-out city. The taxi driver dropped us on the corner of First Avenue. He refused to go any further. I grabbed our bags, and 2 Puerto Rican boys offered to help us with the rest for $1 each. A junkie laid across the door. I nudged him with my foot. He moved to the side. I heard a shout. "Motherfucker, why you kick George?" A black junkie stood on the sidewalk. The 2 boys whispered, "Hakeem," and ran away. "I'll teach you to fuck with George." He charged up the stairs, and I chucked the heaviest bag at him, knocking him off his feet. His head clonked on the concrete. K-ho. I've been in New York for a year. I'm used to the chaos. Ann loves it too. But she doesn't like the violence. Not in the heat of August. Later. Ann is okay with the barrio. Our rent is only $180 a month. This evening, we stripped newspapers off the walls, pasted by the previous hippie tenant cursing him. Cockroaches scurried into the corners. Ann eked. I was grossed out. We were in a city, our new home. The night was sluggishly hot, and we lay on the futon like Drano addicts. "Do you want to make love?" Ann looked in my eyes. "You have to be kidding." Yeah, she was right. It was too hard to have a hard-on, and I laid next to Ann until I fell asleep for the night. August 3rd. After paying my rent, I have no money, no job. I'm completely at the mercy of Ann. And she says, "Don't worry, I'll take care of us." I go out looking for a job. I find nothing. Some more bad poetry too. Larry.
Bad Poetry, Part 2. Seconds. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Seconds. People die in less, a car crash. People love in less, the pleasure of sex. Years run before millions of seconds. A second before the end of love. The end of love. And I can't deny it by saying, I wasn't here, was I? Big sky. It was late in Butte, Montana. I drove up to the bar, filled with cowboys, Indians, miners, divorcees, and drunks. I ordered a bourbon and beer and looked for my wife. She's not here. She was nowhere to be found. I wait. Last call. Another beer and bourbon. And I can't forget Mona. This morning I was in the shower. I smelled bacon and eggs. When I got to the kitchen, the bacon and eggs were there, but there was no Mona. Past last call, past my last drink, I go out to the truck, drunk, but not done looking for my wife, Mona. Butte ain't big sky, but Montana is my last call. Montana is my last call.
Thank you, Larry, for rendering me legible. Anyway, August 16th, journal entry. In a Greek diner on Bleecker Street, I see Ann passing, but she doesn't see me. I run out and snatch her purse. She bent her arm, and the straps caught in the crook of her arm. "You asshole." I said, "Yeah." I had hurt my hand on the metal handles. Guess I wasn't meant to be a purse snatcher. That wasn't funny. I was just testing your survival awareness. I hate tests. You know I do. Sorry. I was testing myself to see if I was any good. You suck. She was really angry at me. August 16th. Last night, I snorted 9 lines of cocaine. I got very nervous, and my penis shrunk to the size of a cashew. Later, I really didn't sleep. Cocaine insomnia. Ann is working at Yogurt Delight and won't get back till 3. I'm doing a drug deal with Mark. $2,100 for an OZ that normally costs $1,400. Mark looks at me and says, "I don't care. It's not my money." December 2nd. What's an evening without a fight? Last night at the Irving Plaza, I was trying to clear the crowd after the New Wave vaudeville. The show was a complete success, and people didn't want to leave. I asked a chubby rocker with glasses to finish his drink. He looked familiar, but I couldn't place the face. And he asked, "Who the fuck are you?" "I work here." "I don't give a shit," he answered, and then asked, "Do you know who I am?" He stepped closer, and his friends flanked me. "No, you're no one to me." I pushed him away, and his friends grabbed my arms. I freed myself and snatched one of them by the hair. My punch was so hard that a hank of his blonde hair came out in my left hand. I was thrown to the floor and then kicked by the 5 of them. No one came to my aid. A kick cracked my ribs. Alex from the downstairs bar stopped the beating, and I discovered that the chubby rocker was Chris Stein, the guitarist from Blondie, and the one I scalped was Jimmy Destry. Debbie Harry stood on the stage and glared at me as her band members shouted out accusations. "He started it." "All I did was ask you to leave." Alex led me away. "Well, it's not every night you get beaten up by Blondie. You're lucky it was them and not some fucking bikers." Yeah, I was really lucky. I could barely breathe. I went back to the apartment. Ann came in and said, "Blondie wants to play tomorrow night, but won't play if you're there." That's show business. Now I'd like to bring up the lovely Ann Magnuson, one of my longest friends in the world, longtime friends.
Thanks, Peter. These are excerpts from a journal that I kept when I first got to New York in January 1978 as part of a work-study program through my college. And it was required that I keep this journal from the Great Lakes College Association, and I had to check in with them periodically as I roamed the streets of New York and worked as an intern at the Ensemble Studio Theater, which was at the time uptown on 11th Avenue and 52nd Street, I think it was, a very desolate part of town. So I will just kind of hopscotch through this and hope it's not too verbose. Tuesday, January 17th. There's a blizzard in town. What a mess. First, I must write whatever I think, I suppose, rather than trying to always compose perfect and resonant thoughts. There seem to be there, but they're too few. There's too much going on in my head. I could write plays. I ought to. I'm thinking in tableau and celluloid rather than humanoid. I'm here in the cloakroom at the MoMA, strangely enough. But I'm observing the people there. Coat check girl with sagging tits. The images of New York City are endless. Americans are wonderful. Why is London so hopeless? I just spent the year before in London. Alexa agrees. A common ground of melancholia there. Hamlet wasn't a Dane. The weather here is chilly, so why are the people alive? American? No. New York fucking City. What is it that I want? I must see some Robert Wilson or Richard Foreman. I think the answer lies there. The ideas at EST bore me. The business bores me. I must arrange a haircut. I need boots, a better apartment with privacy. Fuck this dorm nonsense. So they want to read my journal? Good luck, sweet meats. The museum will be, because my handwriting was impossible. I barely got this transcribed. The museum will be closing in 15 minutes. Enter people, exit me, into the city. Hello, Alphaville, with your ice cube tray lights. I have some cheesecake at Eddie Claire on West 72nd Street. It's not that good. William Fleet Lively tells me the best is down the next block. William is a true scream. I want to be with these kinds of people who are so talented. Thursday, January 20th, night spent at CBGB's to see Richard Hell, but it turned out to be a rather slight performance in front of a film crew. I meet the Australian girl, Kathy Underhill, and Peter, Kathy, and I retreat to a bar down the road, which I think was Phoebe's, for an Irish coffee. I see some voidoids through the front window. Richard Hell has the hair I want. Have a drunken night back to Peter's, struggled in the morning with a hangover through the village to work at EST. I'm reading with actors for auditions. Some of them are from the soap Another World. Will I be a script girl? I look at resumes, must make mine. This journal is absurd. It seems irrelevant to jot down these details. What concerns me are larger ideas. Do I want to be in the theater? What do I want? I should call Kathy tonight. She said she could cut my hair. Le coiffe, le voidoid. I actually wrote that. I'll eat vanilla yogurt for lunch. Thursday, January 25th. Squat theater. Pig child fire. At last, a breath of life in the corpse of the theater that I've been lying with. This was marvelous, so wonderful, superlative, etc. Alfred Jarry, Cocteau, Dostoevsky read out loud. The theater opens onto the street to encompass passers-by. Its originality is a joy. Hysterical encounters with the outside, and they have video with Nous on les mannequins. Memo to self, get Kraftwerk. Reminiscent of Godard with his gangsters, guns in the street, sharpening of a hatchet to chop off the head of the man who sticks a gun and a silencer up his ass. I suddenly appear on the live video TV during the scene that they're having dinner. Artaud, letter to André Breton. I get the intimacy, involvement, joy, entertainment, importance, comfort that the theater gives or should give. I go to the Chelsea Hotel on the way home, check out the lobby, and days gone by. Wouldn't mind this area for a flat. Saturday, January 28th. Checked out a bookstore to look at Patti Smith's new book, Babel. I am so drawn to her. I think she's a very gifted person. And I don't know if I'm so envious or jealous of her as simply magnetized to her myth. And speaking of myths, New York City is one. Free lunch at Serendipity. Chat with a black fellow who works at CBS who was complaining about Studio 54, that it's for ugly people now. Saturday, February 11th, reviewing notes on the scene work that we're doing at EST for Streetcar Named Desire. Kurt Dempster, who was the artistic director, I was the assistant for, his explanation of the scene feels too remote and intellectually explained rather than emotionally communicated and transferred. Kurt says, we've made good progress. I think the actresses are bewildered and befuddled. And they were. It was Christine Lottie and Celia Weston who were playing opposite what they would have normally been cast as. Peter on Saturday. Peter on Sunday. Sunday, February 12th. Peter quit serendipity. Pasolini versus the modern world. Consumerism. Exploitive, sad fascism in capitalism. I don't feel well, but was made to work today on a Sunday. On a Sunday, slave labor. Fuck you. I hate being a peon. I don't like to take orders, and I don't like to give orders. Well, tonight we went to Max's to see the Erasers. There were some personalities like Richard Hell there. I ordered cheeseburger and some cheesecake. Somewhat dull drinking wine turns my lips a new shade of purple, so I don't need lipstick. In the bathroom, the purple striped shirt and green coat look awfully nice with my pallor and new coif. Devoidoid. Go back in the club. There's a fight with beer showered upon me. I threw the ashtray back at the guy, and he splashed more beer, so I threw my wine. Glass crashed. Peter interferes. Fight! 2 exclamation points. Fight! 3 exclamation points. Slept with Peter tonight. I thought I saw Patti Smith in the audience. Thought I was sure. Thursday, March 31st. Rehearsal for Tom Scully's play, Mugu Guy Plan, was zoological. Very lax, sort of too lax, but amusing. I hope there can be some more structure, and then let everyone improvise from there. As unimpressed as I was with the play when I first read it, I think clean-cut character work and well-channeled imagination could result in an entertaining and fanciful romp. Some homosexual lewdness here and there, but the 60s and 70s have paid the way to boredom for that. Still, there are some small, sharp wits in the bunch. It's going to be of utmost importance that I get a good costume together. If I hope to fit into that black bustier, I have to seriously diet. Peter wants $30 for rent. The ride back from St. Mark's Church on the RR and IRT 7th Avenue to my dorm room uptown was marred with paranoia, of which I have not experienced lately. I felt and looked so vulnerable, a real hit. Thank God I returned safely, finished reading a 1-act. Sunday, April 2nd, moved into my new apartment downtown and unpacked. This wasn't the one we moved into. It was across from the Ritz, where I got a 2-month lease. Went over to Peter's this afternoon after a big drama, which turned out to be a false alarm for $50 being lost. It was found in the envelope addressed to his landlord in the Joe Orton book that Peter's reading. It's been a long time since I've cried, but I really let it out. Then Peter and I had sex and then proposed the idea that we get married, but neither of us could really take it very seriously. Hopes of having a bran muffin for dinner were dashed to the rocks. But substitutions were found at Dunkin' Donuts, with 2 whole wheat donuts and 1 cinnamon munchkin, plus Sanka. I end up with a bellyache. Try to call Dad to let him know of my move, but no answer. Paid rent, and I'm left with very little money, so must budget and take advantage of as many free offers as possible. Looking through plays, and I'm at a loss. Fassbinder looks interesting. Handke always looks interesting. Well, it's back to finances. Let's see now. Each meal approximately costs no more than $2 to $4. Transport to and fro work is $1. Now, being downtown, I won't have to travel as much. Yoga, if I do it daily, is $2.50, $7.50 a day. Yoga can be replaced with a club or a movie as needed. Rounded off to 8 times 7, 50, 6 times 4, that's $124 a month I'll need. And what I have for April is a $100 check minus $50 cash to Peter, total $175. I only get $100. Deficit! You figure it out. Answer, a job. Cutbacks. Yes, Peter owes me $40 plus $5 equals $45. The total now is $210. I should make it without hitting up Dad for additional funds, but must be frugal. Last entry for tonight. Monday, April 3rd. Kurt Dempster at Ensemble Studio Theater is much too serious. The actors in the play, Sam and Dan, try to cut up at the rehearsal, and it falls like an anvil. Kurt makes them take all this time to prepare, the method. Yeah, sure, but Jesus Christ, this isn't a liturgical drama. It's got to be fun, right? Talking to Elaine Bronca about Kurt as a director. She had him as a teacher 10 years ago. Said he was weird with women. Very psychological, too intense, not fun enough in rehearsal. I say, if it's not fun, I don't want to do it. I said that at school, and I say that now. And Fassbender said the same thing.
Thank you very much, Sweet Anne. She was always my hillbilly girlfriend. Next up is The Rules of Mr. KLAUS, which is a recording of a photo roman by Anthony Scabelli doing the photos along with Kim Davis and myself. And I wrote the story, and it's being read by Willem Dafoe.
In the early 70s, the Twin Towers rose over lower Manhattan. But by 1978, New York City was bankrupt and the desolation of the Battery Park landfills stretched along the Hudson. The wind off the river blew sand in all directions and whole neighborhoods fled the spreading anarchy. The rich knew nothing of the poor. Every morning, Concords flew wealthy passengers from JFK to Paris. The roar of Rolls-Royce engines traveled 12 miles from the airport to the stricken East Village. The takeoffs were that loud. Sean lived on East 10th Street with a blonde catalog model. Days, photographers shot Lisa. Nights, she dated a tennis player. It's good for my career. Usually, she returned at dawn. Sean never asked any questions and wrote poems about the waiting. Lisa never read his journals. No one did. When people wanted things, they called Sean. Sometimes it was a girl. Plenty of fun girls roamed New York. They did things for money because everything had a price. Sometimes his work was easy, especially if people did what they said they were going to do. Other times, people got cute. Cute got people hurt. In the end, playing nice was in people's best interest. Sean came from Boston. New York ran on different rules. He understood some of its games, but no one understood everything, although a Mr. KLAUS thought he knew all the answers. Tony had introduced the German professor at a party. Lisa had not come home for 2 days, and Sean had not been in his best form. I might have some work for you, Mr. KLAUS said with German accent, but I have one rule. You do what I say. I don't have a problem with that. You know my price? Yes. Then call me when you need me, as long as it's not tonight. A day later, Mr. KLAUS asked Sean to meet a woman named Clover at the new Lost Bar in Times Square. Tony came over with a wad of 20s. Sean paid the photographers a fee and asked, "You trust this KLAUS?" "I trust no one." "Me neither." Distrust was always best in New York. That afternoon, Sean showed up on time. Clover arrived 10 minutes late. The blonde teenager was young, but not a girl, and she explained, I was a mistress to a Texas oil baron at 13. Does that make me bad? No, but it doesn't make you good. Let's have a drink. Sean ordered a gin tonic. Clover had a martini. The bartenders at the New Lost Bar never checked any girls for ID. Do some of this. She handed him a vial. Mr. KLAUS wants you to. Do you always do what he says? She smiled with a laugh. When it comes to Mr. KLAUS, yes. Clover danced on the bar table, or at least Sean thought it was Clover. In truth, it didn't matter because Lisa was erased from his mind. By the time they left the New Lost, Sean felt no pain. Times Square looked like a pinball machine with Clover as the flipper and Sean as the ball. Somehow they ended up in the subway. Sean asked the conductor for help. You don't need any help if you got her. New Yorkers were experts at minding their own business. The next stop was Mr. KLAUS's penthouse. Willkommen, time for business. Sean was in no condition to refuse him. Clover had her way with him. Afterwards, Mr. KLAUS asked, Do you feel different? No, it was a lie. Good, I have a job for you. It might require violence. I wouldn't be here if it didn't. An ex-associate has something of mine. What? A ball on a box in a refrigerator. And you only want the ball? Yeah. And what does the ball do? Does it really matter? No. Clover really likes you. Where is she? She is upstairs. You will see her later. Mr. KLAUS drove him to a luxurious townhouse on the Upper East Side. The street was quiet. The rich could afford order even in a city of chaos. That's Cookie's house. I'll take care of her. And me? There's a man with a gun. Does he know how to use it? No. Then he's just a man. Can you kill him? That costs more. Sean was many things, but not a killer. Maybe, but things will go bad for Clover. KLAUS showed a photo. It was Tony's style. He had others. KLAUS was worse than Clover's Texas oil baron. Bring me the ball. I will. Sean didn't say how. The man with the gun was a young boy. Sean strangled him to unconsciousness. He was too young to die and too pretty too. The steel ball seemed like a steel ball. Sean held it in his hand. He saw things. One was that he could break Mr. KLAUS's rule. On the stairs, Mr. KLAUS had a blonde bound by a rope. Cookie. She looked tough. Sean nodded to her. Cookie yanked on the rope. Mr. KLAUS tumbled down the stairs. He didn't stop until the bottom. Sean left with the ball. He was his own man again. He found Clover in a bag. He wrote on her thigh before freeing her. I thought you'd never come back. You were wrong. What did you write? A poem. You can read it later. Sean took her to his place. Lisa was gone. She had taken everything but the TV and a set of weights. Nice apartment. Clover picked up a dumbbell. I want to be strong like you. It was a good idea. New York was a tough town for the weak. Sean turned on the TV. Clover read the words on her thigh. I like your poem. I wrote it for you. Her smile told him that she would be a good roommate. He had the ball and he had Clover. And both were good things in 1978 because the wind-blown sand had no rules. Not in New York, not anywhere.
I'd like to say thank you very much, Eric, for putting that together. Eric Marciano, who's one of my great friends and a great collaborator for here. And this is going to be the last section for my book called Gayboy. Back in New York, I worked as a busboy at Serendipity 3. The waiters were all gay. Their favorite movie was Mildred Pierce. Each one of them answered to a woman's name. The kitchen staff called me Pebbles, since I resembled a caveman. The pastry cook was a dead ringer for Joseph Goebbels' nephew. KLAUS sang castrati roles for opera. His name in the restaurant was Eva Braun. We toured the clubs in the West Village, where men explored the most extreme edges of sex in the back rooms. These exploits would have brought tears to a mother's eyes and caused their fathers to curse Ken dolls. Yet the boys explored the bounds of decency, and it tried to push back the stem of rising sexual freedom. Later, KLAUS and I frequented Max's Kansas City's and CBGB's. The two bars were my home at night. No one cared as long as we were punk. The Ramones played once a month. I bought a leather jacket. Bruce came down from Boston. You look really butch. Bruce had left his boyfriend, and nothing cured a broken heart better than a trawl of back rooms in the West Village with KLAUS. During the 1977 blackout, the boys from Serendipity 3 and I raided Fiorucci, a disco accessory shop on East 60th Street. I chucked a cinder block at a window in hopes of snatching a gold Elvis suit. The concrete missile bounced off the protective glass and nearly struck my head. Frank Holiday, Andy Reese, Willem Lively, and Kurt and I ran from the guards. The story was rendered funnier each and every time they told the story. Later, they introduced me to a smart girl from West Virginia seeking to be an actress. Alice's eyes were brown and green. We went to CBGB's, saw the Heartbreakers, and I bought her 2 drinks. 2 were her limit. She had 5. Late one night in 1978, a doctor from NYU called for our apartment and reported that James Spicer was dying of pneumonia. Anne had never met Jim, and she was angry I was leaving her alone. I went anyway. Arriving at NYU, I discovered an empty hospital ward, and the nurses were reluctant to enter the room. An Italian doctor explained in the corridor. Gay men have been dying of pneumonia. We can't say why. The nurses call it the gay man's disease. This was the first I heard of the ailment, and I sat by James's bed without any fear as he coughed like he was giving birth to a lung. James, I'm here. Yes, you're here. Old what's-his-name. He drifted back to sleep, and I whistled jazz lullabies during the long night. As the eastern horizon backlit the dark silhouette of Brooklyn, James asked with a startled horror, where am I? In a hospital. Am I dying? His eyes shone with fear. Not right now. It was as much the lie as it was the truth. I'm just here to keep you company. He says, you weren't much of a writer, but you were a good storyteller. Tell me one now, something with a happy ending. I recounted a story about a teenage love and me breaking up with Kyla. Jim laughed at the right and wrong parts, his lungs hacking blood. What about the happy ending? Pal and Kyla had kids. They're still married. And you have me. Yes, we have each other. I patted his hand, and Jim rested after I upped his morphine drip. Another excerpt. That summer, Michael and I vacationed in Maine. We swam in the Saco River. He enjoyed my retelling of meeting Jesus on LSD. We had a good time, and good times should have lasted us into the next century. But that was wishful thinking. for he contracted AIDS in 1994. The doctors at Beth Israel fought the infections with a series of toxic drugs. His health fluctuated between bad and worse. My friend Scotty was opening a nightclub in Beverly Hills, and I asked Michael, do you mind if I go? I'm dying and you want me to go, you want to go to Beverly Hills? You're not dying. Not yet. What about your married mistress? You know about that? Bruce told me. Funny, before adultery wouldn't have bothered me, but now I think about the 10 Commandments. All of them? Yes, all of them. But you can go to Beverly Hills as long as you get me Tom Selleck's autograph. At the hospice, the nurse let us out of earshot of the attending doctors. Funny, patients never leave if a family member is in the room. The hospice encourages your being with them because the longer you're with them, the bigger the bill. I told this to my father, and he gathered the family. They came over within an hour. It was our time for us to say goodbye to Michael. We each spoke for a little while. His face showed no signs of life. My mother hugged him for a long time. My father pulled her into the corridor. The doctors regarded us with suspicion that they knew what they knew. Within an hour, Michael passed over to the angels. And this is the final piece. It's over 20 years since my brother's death. Ann lost her brother Bobby. We're friends again. My mother and father are gone. And Bruce and I meet over the holidays. We never talk about the old times. One winter afternoon, I mentioned to him at a cafe in Boston's Newbury Street that I had dreamed of meeting Michael and my brother, who passed away in the winter following his departure. Where are they? In a Cape Cod cottage with no furniture, and they don't stay very long. My mother's happy to be with her baby boy, although Michael has places to go, and she's waiting for the rest of us to join her. These dreams challenged my disbelief in heaven, because spending eternity with everyone you've lost over the years wouldn't be so bad. So there's life after death? In my dreams, yes. Better there than nowhere. We emerged from the cafe. Several people looked at the sky. 2 rainbows floated in a high winter squall, and an older man said, I can't ever remember seeing a rainbow in January. I couldn't either, yet I recognized the message from the other side. My brother had one time asked if I were gay, and I never gave him an answer. Now I had the answer. Being straight, gay, black, white, old, young, woman, man, and all the in-betweens and outsides and insides doesn't matter, because we're all as special as those winter rainbows. It takes a little bit of faith to see that truth, and that leap can take us to the stars. They're not as far away as you feel. P.S. My brother comes to me in my dreams, along with my other friends. One day I'll go see James, KLAUS, William, Andy, Bobby, Corrine, Howie, and Michael Charles Smith, but not today. Thank you very much. Ann has brought some free CDs. If you line up here, we'll throw them to the crowd and see the frenzy. I thank you all very much for coming. I thank for Ron and Sophie, our sound man, and all our friends here and beyond. Thank you.